Hello and welcome to Daily Prelims Practice, where we take up the questions from the Hindu and the Indian Express and curate the question as per the demands of civil services prelims. The topics for the discussion have been listed on your screen. Moving on to the first article of the day, the article has featured on page 13 of the Indian Express and basically talks about the issue of farm exports from India. Now, the article analyzes the agri exports in the last 5 years and also analyzes the sectors that dominate the agri exports from India, ranging from marine products, sugar, rice, etc. And also highlights that the global prices and the domestic food inflation are the key factors that affect the agricultural exports from India. Now, UPSC under the economy section has continuously asked questions related to various exports and import related terminologies and the facts. And such a question was asked in Prelims 2019 when it asked about the exporter of rice. A practice question in this regard regarding the general exports from India can be framed. The practice question here says, with reference to Indian agricultural trade, which of the following statement is or are correct? The first statement here is Indian agriculture exports have risen continuously for the past 5 years. Now, this statement is incorrect, as though agricultural exports have been increasing, but it has not risen continuously in the last 5 years, as there was a slump in the year 2019-20. Moving on to the second statement, it says non-basmati rice is the top exported agriculture item of the country. Now, this statement is also incorrect, as the top exported item from India is marine product. So, the second statement here is also incorrect. Moving on to the third statement, it says vegetable oils are the largest item that are imported by India. Now, this statement is correct. The vegetable oil imports have more than doubled in terms of value in the past 3 years and has also increased in the quantity terms in the last 3 years. So, vegetable oils are the largest item that are imported by India, and hence statement 3 is correct. The question for this is select the correct answer using the code given below, and as only third statement is correct, the correct code for the given question is option B. Further, the correct code for the previous year question is also option B. Moving on to the next article of the day that has featured in Indian Express on page 10 talks about the organizations like Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the grouping of G20. Now, under international relation, UPSC has continuously asked about the questions related to the organizations that were in news, and G20 and SCO are in news in the recent time as India is holding the presidency of G20 for this year. Now, UPSC and previously in the year 2022 only has asked a question related to the G20 and has gone a step further regarding G20. A practice question regarding the G20 thus can be framed. The practice question here says, consider the following statement regarding G20. The first statement here is, it was founded after the global financial crisis of 2008. Now, this statement is incorrect. The G20 was founded in 1999 after the Asian financial crisis took place. It was found as a forum for finance ministers and central bank governors to discuss global economic and financial issues. It was after the global financial crisis of 2008 that for the first time the head of summit meeting was organized in Washington. Moving on to the second statement, it says Alliance for Global Food Security is an initiative of G20 to fight the hunger crisis. Now, this statement is also incorrect, as Alliance for Global Food Security is an initiative of G7 and not G20. So, both the statements given here are incorrect. The question for this is, which of the following statement is or are correct? And as none of the statements given here are correct, the correct code for the given question will be option D. Further, the correct code for the previous year question is option C. Moving on to the next article of the day that has featured in the Hindu under the text and context section basically talks about the Blue Sky. Now, the article says that the Blue Sky is the latest microblogging platform in the market and discuss the details about the microblogging website, that is the Blue Sky, which is built on the authenticated transport protocol. Now, UPSC under the science and tech section and under various initiatives related to the cyber space have asked questions in the prelims examinations, and such a question was seen in the year 2018. A practice question in this regard can also be framed, which says that Blue Sky was in news recently. It is related to, and as we have discussed, that it is a microblogging platform built on the authenticated transport protocol. Further, a military upgrade to come out of NATO security doctrine is related to European Sky Shield initiative. A financial intermediary fund has been launched, which is a fund for pandemic prevention, preparedness and response, and has been launched by WHO with World Bank being as a trustee. And we have discussed that Blue Sky is a microblogging platform which has been recently launched. Further, the answer for the previous year question is also option C. Moving on to the next article of the day, the article is featured on page 9 of the Hindu and basically talks about the improvement of technologies in order to detect the IEDs or the improvised explosion devices. Now there was a attack on the security forces recently in the Dantewada district of Chhattisgarh. And this area can be used by UPSC to frame a question regarding the scientific developments surrounding the IEDs or the improvised explosive device. In 2022 also, UPSC has asked a question related to the ice cube as it was in news. A practice question regarding the IEDs thus can be framed. The practice question here says, which of the following technologies are used for detecting IEDs? The first example here is the X-ray machine. The second example here is of chemical sensors, and the third option here is of ground penetrating radar. Now all the options given here are correct. Primarily, chemical sensors are widely used for detecting IEDs as they can detect the presence of explosive materials or chemicals used in the construction of the device. X-ray machine and ground penetrating radar can also be used to detect IEDs, but they are used sparingly as they are more costly and the availability is also limited. The question further says, select the correct answer using the code given below. And as all the options given here are correct, the correct code for the given question will be option D. Further, the correct code for the previous year question is also option D. Moving on to the next article of the day that has appeared on page 8 of the Hindu, basically talks about the WHO. Now, through this article, we'll try to understand the public health emergency of international concern that is announced by the WHO. As UPSC under the Science and Technology section has continuously asked questions that were in news, and such a question in 2021 was asked related to the hereditary diseases. It was recently announced by WHO that COVID-19 has been taken from the public health emergency of international concern after more than 1100 days of its inclusion. A practice question in this regard is framed. The practice question says, consider the following statements with reference to public health emergency of international concern. The first statement here is, nations should promptly respond to public health emergency of international concern, that is PHEIC, but it is not legally binding. Now this statement is incorrect. A public health emergency, PHEIC, is a formal declaration by WHO as defined by the regulation of 2005, and it is an extraordinary event which is determined to constitute a public health risk to other states through international spread of diseases. Further, the 2005 regulation also provides that these guidelines are legally binding instrument. Thus, all the member states of WHO have a legal duty to respond promptly to PHEIC. The second statement here says, declaration of PHEIC may lead to increased funding for the research and development of the treatment. Now, this statement is correct, as the declaration of PHEIC may lead to increased funding and resources for the research and development of treatment as well as the vaccines. Further, as for the definition of PHEIC as a matter of knowledge to understand, it says the definition implies a situation that is serious, sudden, unusual or unexpected, carries implication for public health beyond the affected state's national border, and can require immediate international action. The question further says which of the statement given above is or are correct, and as only statement 2 is correct, the correct code for the given question will be option B. Further, the correct code for the previous year question is option C. Moving on to the next article of the day, the article is featured on page 8 of the Hindu and basically talks about the coronation of the new King Charles in the United Kingdom. Now, we have framed a practice question regarding the same in a manner that can be asked under the polity section and that can check the basics of knowledge regarding the polity. As UPSC previously has also asked various questions related to the basics of polity section, and thus a practice question in this regard has been made. The practice question here says, consider the following statements regarding the two forms of parliamentary system which has monarchical and the republican system. The first statement here is, in both types of system, the actual governing power lies with elected representatives in the parliament. Now this is correct. In both the types of parliamentary system, the actual governing power lies with the elected representatives in the parliament. Wherein, though the actual power lies with the elected representatives in the parliament, in a monarchical system, the system is more traditional and conservative, whereas in a system of republican government under the parliamentary setup, the system tends to be more democratic and progressive. But the actual power at the end lies with the elected representatives. For example, in the case of India, wherein the actual power lies with the Council of Ministers, with Prime Minister being the head. So, statement 1 here is correct. Moving on to the second statement, it says, in a republican parliamentary system, the head of the state is an elected president who may have significant governing power depending on specific constitutional arrangement. Now, this statement is also correct. The basic difference between the monarchical and the republican parliamentary system is that the head of the state in republican parliamentary system is elected, while in a monarchical parliamentary system, the head of state is a monarch, such as king or the queen. Further, it is to understand, in a republican parliamentary system, the power sharing agreement is determined as per the constitutional arrangement and provides specific powers to the head of the state, for example, executive powers, powers to appoint minister, veto legislation, etc. So, statement 2 here is also correct. Further, the question says which of the statement given above is or are incorrect, and as none of the statement given above are incorrect, the correct code for the given question will be option D.